Caitlin Clark continues her recovery from a back ailment. With Aaliyah Boston sidelined, Seattle counters with two giants. Dominique Malonga and our fam stand ready to dominate the interior, paired with the explosive guard Flo Jason. Yet, by the game's conclusion, the Fever hadn't merely secured a win, they shattered 14 separate records. Clark claimed 11 of those milestones herself, including some long-standing marks established before she was even born. This provides an in-depth look at the night the record books were rewritten and how Caitlin Clark silenced her doubters. Type CC Record Breaker in the comments to express your support for Caitlin's performance. Include the logo. Deep 3 from the wing. Swish! Caitlin Clark hits a franchise-best 41 points, giving the Fever a 3-point lead with 38 seconds left. Seattle calls time. Let's address the injury situation, which had the Fever faithful on edge well before the opening tip-off. Aaliyah Boston is out with a lower leg issue, and Caitlin Clark is still managing her lingering back soreness. She wasn't even cleared for a full workload. Indiana entered this match without their starting center and a compromised star. Now, they had to find a defensive solution inside against a Seattle squad designed to exploit exactly those kinds of vulnerabilities. Catch you all tomorrow. Let's go. Post some W's in the chat, a career-best performance. Keep those wins rolling in. See you next time. That reality made the situation precarious. Seattle featured the 6'6" Dominique Malonga and 6'4" our fam ready to battle in the paint for the duration of the match. These aren't merely tall players occupying space. Malonga can effectively score with her back to the rim, and Fam provides a perimeter threat with her three-point shooting, which forces Indiana's defense to stretch thin. Without Boston defending the basket, that mismatch creates a significant hurdle that could easily determine the game's outcome. So, who remained? To stabilize the situation, Michaela Timson, a second-year player, stepped into her first career start with almost no notice. Imagine the pressure. You learn you are starting against one of the league's most physical front courts with only hours to adjust. KK, speaking to those who aren't her teammates, what is it like witnessing her act as the architect of such remarkable play? It's just pure excellence, honestly. I mean, she executes such unbelievable moves on the court. Obviously, her trademark deep shots, her ability to create space, and how she navigates through screens to get open. We have complete faith in her here on the Fever. She's an elite athlete. She is constantly communicating with me, saying, "Hey, come set this screen," and it works. Supporting her in any capacity during play is my priority, given she is such an exceptional talent. Additionally, Monique Billings was thrust into an expanded position, serving as the seasoned anchor needed to keep the team steady. As the rest of the squad adapted in real time, offensive output wasn't the only concern for the trainers. They also fretted over rebounding responsibilities, defensive positioning switches, and if Indiana possessed sufficient roster depth to withstand penalty issues. Meanwhile, Flau'jae Johnson patrolled the arc for Seattle, a backcourt threat capable of turning a 20 OT rebounding failure into a long-range bucket instantly. Consequently, the primary pre-game inquiry was straightforward. Would the Fever manage Seattle's physical stature and pace, while Aaliyah Boston remained sidelined? During the opening minutes, the gap appeared more precarious than experts suggested, a tension palpable to spectators once Seattle gained significant traction on the charts. Caitlin, you set personal records despite playing limited minutes. How at ease did you feel? You appeared locked in immediately. Well, I felt I pushed the pace right away, shaking off any early errors to find my rhythm. It was clear my presence was vital for the squad while AB was missing. And I'm impressed by our collective grit. Overcoming an 8-point deficit late shows serious heart, though we have to prepare for tomorrow's matchup already. This victory is fantastic, but we're refocusing. Prior to discussing Clark's night, we must highlight 3 milestones reached by her peers during that same evening in that identical arena. Kelsey Mitchell deserves immediate praise for her explosive performance from the very first whistle. Her 17-point explosion in the initial period alone marked the highest individual scoring output for any 10-minute stretch in the history of the franchise. This isn't just a seasonal peak, it's an all-time high. She dominated by sinking long bombs and driving past defenders, claiming her territory on the floor before Seattle's defensive scheme could even stabilize. Traditional scoring styles were cast aside. Clark initiates here, firing a pass to Billings, who meets resistance from Vaughn. Billings finds Mitchell, whose shot rattles in, luckily. Seattle's strategic choice here is interesting. They prefer to retreat and set their defensive wall while managing Clark's heavy involvement. Then, Mitchell navigates to the hoop for a layup. 45. Her dominance persisted throughout the game. Mitchell successfully converted 3 or more perimeter shots for the 9th consecutive contest, elevating her to the second spot in league records for such a run. She trails only Caitlin Clark, who established a 10-game benchmark during the 2024 season. Consequently, Mitchell is pursuing a milestone established by her fellow Fever star, nearly matching the feat. Additionally, this performance marked Mitchell's 14th time crossing the 30-point threshold and extended her run of double-figure scoring totals to 40 matches in a row. This isn't merely a brief period of momentum or a lucky. Recently, she has become the definition of consistency, delivering points nightly regardless of the defensive schemes used against her. Even after a minor lapse in judgment, Mitchell recovers instantly, showcasing a mental reset speed that is unrivaled in the league. That counts as her third shot from deep. Let's pivot to Michaela Timson, whose personal journey is uniquely compelling. She was thrust into the starting lineup for the first time, with Boston sidelined, leaving her almost no time to mentally adjust. There was no gradual introduction or slow climb from the reserves. She was simply handed the reins and tasked with battling a Seattle front court designed to physically dominate the paint. Caitlin, regarding KK's debut as a starter, how would you describe the evolution and development you've seen from her as a teammate, particularly against the Storm? It was a massive performance. Honestly, that is a brutal first assignment. Seattle is exceptionally talented, possessing great length, speed, an elite transition game, yet she rose to the occasion. I think she mentioned it herself, she has truly committed to the grind. She's constantly in the gym, eager to improve and always looking to soak up knowledge. She spends a significant amount of time working with Rob on player development. I'm incredibly proud of her progress, especially seeing her self-belief grow alongside the confidence we all have in her ability to produce out on the floor. She is easily the most gifted natural athlete I have ever played with, and perhaps the most impressive I have ever witnessed. It's rewarding to see that potential manifest during games. Everyone is starting to realize what she can do, yet she is genuinely only beginning to show her true power. I'm excited to see how far she can go. She absolutely refused to shrink from the challenge. Timson ended the night with 8 points and 9 boards, with 8 of those rebounds coming on the offensive end. Take a moment to process that. Nearly every rebound she secured came from pursuing her own team's missed shots and fighting off bigger, veteran opponents for possession. That is pure hustle. You won't see that highlighted in a flashy montage, and no one is going to set those clips to music. However, those are the exact efforts that secure wins when the offense isn't clicking. That display moved Timson to 3rd place in the Fever record books for offensive rebounding in a single game achieved as a sophomore in her very first career start. That is a significant milestone. It's the story of a player stepping into a high-pressure environment and instantly placing her name alongside league legends. Securing the 3rd highest offensive rebounding total by an individual at such a vital time is the real takeaway. This isn't just about making a box score look impressive for a graphic. This is about a player being tossed into the fire without warning or the support of Boston and Instead of being overwhelmed, she embraced the gritty, physical style of play that truly determines who wins basketball game. Observations like those reveal a competitor's true character. Interestingly, this occurred even prior to the hype surrounding Clark's performance beginning to build, before Clark took center stage. Consider the stats. Mitchell set a new benchmark with her 7-point frame. That is the first milestone. Next, her 9th consecutive game hitting three-pointers marks the second. Then, Timson's dominance on the glass adds a third achievement. Individually, these are 3 distinct Fever franchise highs. Yet Caitlin Clark hasn't even been mentioned. The impact Clark made following those feats transcended mere statistics. She shattered a 3-decade-old barrier that remained untouched throughout many legendary tenures. This record was previously held by an absolute icon of the sport. Scoring 45 points represents the highest single-game total ever achieved by an Indiana Fever athlete. While rewriting history books is standard for you, how does this specific feat resonate? Honestly, it's nice, but I don't dwell on it. I'm fully aware of my potential and understand this squad's ceiling. My priority is driving us toward victories and securing the league's top spot. Currently, we haven't reached that level, so I must guide our progress. The grind continues. Great perspective. Much appreciated, Caitlin. Clark's outing exceeded a personal best. She eclipsed a long-standing mark that was established well before her own birthday. Initially, look at the primary figure, 45 points. A new personal pinnacle for Clark. This performance surpassed her previous scoring benchmark within the Fever organization. She didn't just beat a predecessor, she outdid her own previous standard. Consequently, she demolished that limit once again. It demonstrates an athlete who constantly elevates her game just as spectators believe she's peaked. However, there is more, as within that offensive display lies a velocity record that is perhaps the most shocking statistic for the entire evening. Clark has become the quickest individual in WNBA annals to sink 200 shots from deep, reaching that milestone in only 74 appearances. Consider the magnitude of that speed. Many pros struggle to reach 200 trays over their whole tenure. Clark surged ahead. Furthermore, she currently ranks 5th in Fever all-time three-pointers, illustrating how a solitary game permanently shifted her standing in team history. Clark secures her 3rd takeaway of the opening half. It's a transition opportunity. She pauses, then attacks the rim. To Harris, back to Clark. Perfect. Regarding league-wide standings this year, that 4 5-point effort ranks extremely high. It sits in the number 2 spot, trailing only the 5 3-point game by Marina Mabrey. Thus, Clark's night wasn't merely a personal triumph. It was one of the 2 most prolific offensive performances witnessed across the WNBA this season. Remarkably, she didn't have to force low-percentage attempts to reach that total, as her assist count climbed steadily in tandem with her scoring output. An excellent move toward the paint. Clark executes a flashy behind-the-back pass to Steven, who buries the long-range shot. I have a strong hunch, Pat. I suspect defensive violations will play a factor now. This is a massive chance for Indiana. Clark reaches the 1 5-point mark tonight. From this moment on, we are witnessing a historic transformation. She has now secured 4 career games with 3 0+ points and double-digit assists. This next detail is truly staggering. Every other player throughout the entire existence of the WNBA across every single season has only reached that mark 4 times combined. Clark alone is equaling the cumulative history of the entire league. This isn't just an impressive statistic. It's a performance that completely redefines what is achievable within a single regulation game. There have been entire WNBA matchups with less total scoring than this. Clark responds, "We have a high-stakes shootout happening right here in Indy." Observe the veteran poise from Heidi. Clark drains a massive three-pointer. Indiana looks to find Clark, but they cough up the ball. Johnson steals it, but Clark immediately fights to take it back. Clark strips it away from Johnson, fever possession, and then we see a milestone that is absolutely unprecedented. This has never occurred in 3 decades of professional women's basketball. Clark finished the night with 40 points and 10 assists. Think of all the legendary figures who have graced this league over the last 30 years. Not a single person, not one athlete, ever recorded a 40.10 assist stat line until Clark did so against Seattle. That kind of milestone isn't going to be topped anytime soon. It stands alone. She also managed to extend any times to DeCarfton. Her ongoing streak of 0.10 assist performances, adding more accolades to a legacy she is already dominating. At this point, the box score looks less like a single game and more like a compiled list of broken records. From this sequence, she comes up with a takeaway. Clark, with a beautiful crossover, she buries it. Then comes the achievement that truly reaches back into the history books. Clark was responsible for 67 total points tonight. That figure aggregates her own scoring with the points she generated for her teammates via assists. That number shattered a record, previously held by the icon Diana Taurasi, who produced 65 total points back on the 10th of August, 2006. That benchmark stood firm for 2 entire decades. It lasted through various eras of play and several generations of superstar athletes, until Clark finally surpassed it. Taurasi set that mark. Before Clark was even playing competitive basketball, it took this specific evening in Indiana to finally eclipse it. That makes 9 individual records Clark just established, bringing the total count to 12. They are now just 3 away from the target. We've just passed the season's midpoint, and this backcourt is putting on a show. She didn't achieve all of this in a vacuum, either, because Mitchell was providing elite support. Mitchell stayed by her side throughout the contest. Together, the pair shattered 2 additional benchmarks. Initially, their combined 75 points established a new scoring peak for any tandem in Indiana Fever history. Both athletes reached the 30-point mark in the same matchup, setting a WNBA record for the most joint 30-point games by teammate, a feat no other duo in league history has ever managed to pull off. While Clark was busy dismantling records held by Diana Taurasi and spanning 3 decades of play, Mitchell matched her output to ensure this wasn't just a solo performance. It was a historic offensive display from 2 players that the league had never witnessed before. Every time Clark headed to the bench, the Fever faithful grew anxious as their hard-earned lead began to evaporate. This cycle repeated itself like clockwork. By the 3rd period, the entire crowd recognized the trend. Seattle preferred to retreat and set their half-court defense. We are seeing a heavy reliance on Caitlin Clark during this stretch. Mitchell drives and finishes at the cup. It started with a burst. Mitchell dropped 17 points in the opening frame alone, helping Indiana build what looked like a commanding early cushion. However, that sense of security was short-lived because the moment Clark took a breather, Seattle began clawing their way back into the mix. That was the recurring theme. Indiana creates a gap, Clark rests, and the advantage vanishes before she can even check back into the game. Seattle clearly had a tactical plan to exploit the situation. Malonga and Pham combined for a total of 44 points, highlighting the exact physical mismatch that analysts feared before the tip-off. They dominated the low post, drew constant fouls, and converted second-chance points, punishing an Indiana interior that lacked Aaliyah Boston's presence. Yet, this wasn't just a 2-star effort for Seattle, as their entire starting lineup reached double-digit scoring. This meant Indiana's defense wasn't just battling size inside, they were being pulled apart across the whole floor. From one possession to the next, Malonga finds an opening. Look at Johnson snatching that board and putting it back up. What a vital rebound by F.J. Johnson. Clark briefly loses her handle. Here is Clark with the dish. Billings lays it in hand. Draws the foul. Billings heads to the stripe with a chance to even the score. The fourth quarter turned into an absolute battle of wills. Both squads traded buckets incessantly, with neither side able to find enough breathing room. Every time Indiana managed to score, Seattle answered immediately to keep pace. It's the kind of high-stakes environment where the arena erupts on every play because no one knows which way the game will swing. Finally, Indiana's defensive unit tightened up when it counted most, limiting Seattle to just 19 points in the final frame, period, marking a major turnaround after giving up baskets all evening. This specific window is where the Indiana squad at last resembled the powerhouse expected to dominate today. Monique Billings provided a massive rejection that killed Seattle's rally just as they gained ground. Additionally, Lexi Hall secured 3 crucial turnovers, converting Seattle's mistakes into immediate fast-break scoring. While these efforts rarely lead to the nightly highlights, they are the sole reason Seattle's comeback fell short. Indiana's 5: Cunningham, Clark, Mitchell, Timson, and Billings. Cunningham feeds Timson. The Fever look for Clark, but the pass is intercepted. Johnson steals it, then it's stripped back. Clark deflects it off Johnson. Fever retain possession. A phenomenal display of grit. Then we reach the closing 60 seconds, a period that dictates the entire narrative of this evening. Flower J. Johnson attacked the basket aggressively, aiming for the equalizer, but Clark stood her ground at the hoop, stuffed the attempt. Immediately after, as if following a movie script, Clark sprinted down court and drained the lead-taking long-range bomb. It was the definitive blow that silenced the crowd. A single sequence, a stop at one end, a lethal triple at the other. That transition effectively ended Seattle's hopes. Johnson jars it loose. Clock under 10. Clark shoots. Bucket! She's unstoppable! Caitlin Clark is taking over! This brief interval perfectly captures the entire game. Indiana establishes control, nearly squanders it, and subsequently, the very athlete whose playing time was limited by medical staff becomes the individual who secures the final stop and drains the dagger. Seattle possessed every opportunity to snatch a victory in the clutch, but Clark denied them. Following the buzzer, Clark emphasized the concept of faith, relying on her rehabilitation and physical strength after missing time with a back issue. Her flow is fully restored. There's no second-guessing or physical caution anymore. Coach Stephanie White highlighted their defensive progression as the primary evolution, overshadowing the offensive fireworks everyone is praising. Clark's rejection of Johnson shows a newly formed tactical discipline. Their next opponent is New York, a major litmus test, and the Fever enter with huge momentum and mounting MVP buzz. This Indiana roster no longer appears to be in a transition phase. They look like they've truly arrived. Type CC Record Breaker to support Caitlin. Also, make sure to like, follow, and enable all alerts to catch every highlight and major headline. Select the thumbnail on your screen for more.